There's a fairy tale from Egypt where a girl gets pregnant from a skull, and it's all about how you can't trust those women. It's called The Black Crow and the White Cheese. Starts real spooky with an old man cutting across a cemetery on his way home, and then he sees something glowing, and he picks it up, and it's a glowing human skull, and it has something written on the forehead. According to a note in the book I read this in, there's an Arab adage that says what is written on the forehead must be witnessed by the eye, meaning that predestination is a thing. If it's written, it's gonna happen. What this skull says is, alive I killed 40, and dead I will kill as many. And so the man's like, oh my god, how is this dead skull gonna kill 40 people? But it is, so I gotta prevent this from happening. So he goes home to his wife and he's like, we gotta destroy this skull. They put it in the oven until it is white hot, and then they take it out, put it in a mortar, and pound it down until the skull is powder. Then he puts the powder in a jar, puts the jar in a cabinet and locks it, and keeps the one key in his pocket. Time passes, and eventually it's time for the dude to go on his pilgrimage. He gives his wife the key and he's like, don't let anyone look in this cabinet. She's like, cool, but then she eventually has to go visit a sick relative, so she leaves her daughter alone in the house. The daughter comes across the jar while she's cleaning, and it doesn't say how she got in the cabinet. She didn't have the key, so it must have been left unlocked by someone. She opens the jar and she's like, what is inside here? It doesn't look like coffee or anything, so she dips her finger in and tastes it, and she's like, that was weird, puts it away. Well, 2 or 3 months later, her stomach begins to rise. She is pregnant from tasting the skull powder. The mom freaks out. She brings in midwives who examine her and can tell she's still a virgin. The mom is like, well, I guess you're innocent, so we'll just wait till your dad gets home. But while he's gone, she gives birth to a baby boy. Then when the dad comes home and sees what's happened, his first response is, who touched the jar? Like, he knows immediately what happened. He's like, okay, well, we're just gonna have to see what happens. I guess it's predestined. The boy grows up and he can do really cool things. Like, he can tell his grandfather, who's a merchant, if jewels are actual legitimate gems or if they're fakes. So he becomes known for being kind of wise and magical. Well, one day the local king has a bad dream and he asks the boy to come and interpret it for him. And in his dream, he said, I saw a black crow pecking at a disc of white cheese. What does this mean? The boy, who's really a young man now, says, okay, I'll tell you what it means. Take me to your wife in the harem, in the women's wing. It starts out seeming a little weirdly kinky because the young man says, all right, to the queen, take off your clothes. And she's like, no. And the king's like, he told you to take off your clothes, take off your clothes. And so she does. And then the boy is like, okay, everyone else needs to take off their clothes too, all the women. And so they all do. So they're all standing around there naked, but there's this one woman who won't take her clothes off. The story does specify she is a black maid. The king says, take off your clothes or I'll split you in two. And so she finally takes off her clothes, and guess what? It's not a woman, it's a man who's been secretly, getting it on with the queen. The king says, chop off the head of this man and all of the maids who knew about it and didn't tell me. So they chop off all the heads. Guess what? It's 40 people in total. And so the grandfather at that time says, what I have been told has come true. The boy is responsible for 40 deaths, but it's okay in this sense. But then, however, the story goes in a completely different direction. The king calls to his grown son, clever Muhammad. He says, here's what your mom did. Choose me or choose her. And the son chooses the mom, and he gets banished with the mother, who is kind of lucky she didn't get her head chopped off. The son and the mom travel, and they get to a cave, and there's 40 thieves who live in the cave. And so the son cuts off all of their heads except one who escapes and hides in the back, and they never knew he was there. So they live in the cave with all the riches and stuff, but then one day while Muhammad's out, the mom finds the robber, and he's been injured, and she heals him, and then she starts playing up to him, which is a common way of saying in these stories she's trying to get with him. But he's scared. He's like, if I sleep with you, your son is gonna kill me. And her response is, well, then we just need to kill my son, because she's just the worst. But the robber's awful too, which is an important point to remember later, because he comes up with the idea. He's like, let's send him to get you the water of life, and he'll probably die on the way there. And so she pretends to be sick, says, I need the water of life to send her son off for it. A common trick in a lot of folklore from around North Africa and the Middle East. The boy comes across this wise old man who says, hey, I think your mom's trying to kill you. Muhammad's like, don't say that about my mom. And so the old man is like, okay, I'll help you. And he calls on 3 jinn who apparently just hang around to help him. And one of them flies him to where the water of life is. There's a lion there, and he helps her give birth because she needs help and it isn't going very well. And after she gives birth, she's like, thank you. You can have one of my lion cubs. And he's like, awesome. And he gets the water of life, heads back to the old man. And while he's with the old man switches the water of life, which can bring anyone back to life, with regular water, which will be important later. So then our dude goes home to his mom and says, here you go. She and the robber conspire to send him to get these grapes she needs to be well from an ogre. And so our dude goes back to the old man and he says, ooh, that ogre's ferocious. He steals maidens and after taking their virginity, throws them to his 40 dogs. And the 40 dogs have now become rabid. So like, this is dangerous. But he helps him again. He gives him this wooden sword. He's like, trust me, this is the only sword that will kill the ogre and you have to hit him once with it. Don't do it more than once. So our dude goes, fights the ogre, stabs him once, and the ogre's like, stab me again. And he's like, no. And then it turns out that if he would have brought him back to life. So it was good he listened. His lion literally shreds all the rabid dogs to pieces. And then the town celebrates him as he heads back because now they're not going to get maidens stolen by the ogre anymore. Yay. But then he passes another town that has to sacrifice maidens to a crocodile that comes and eats them. Just otherwise it's going to terrorize the town. And he sees the girl who's currently waiting for the crocodile to come take her. And she's like, you're really handsome and nice. You are too young to die. Just let me die. And he's like, no, I'm going to save you. So he slays the crocodile, saves the girl. The town celebrates him. He takes the girl with him to be his bride. And she's super down with that. But when they stop by the old man's on the way home, the old man is like, leave her with me and then come back for her. Just trust me. So he does. When he gets back home, the robber is like, your son is like a cat with 7 souls, which is kind of interesting. So the mom has one more try. She says, all right, son, let's play Sega, which is a game kind of like checkers. And whoever loses has to be tied up by the other person. He agrees to this, but then he wins 3 times. And every time he ties her up kind of loosely because he feels bad. And then finally he loses on purpose because he feels guilty that she keeps losing. And once he's tied up, she brings out the robber and she's like, all right, slice him up, kill him. But the robber is so scared of the son, he faints from fear. So the mom kills him and cuts him up herself. The robber comes to and they both dispose of his remains in a box that they throw in the Nile. It floats along and who should find it but the girl that he saved from the crocodile. So she gets the box, takes it back to the old man that she's staying with. They open it and they're like, it's Clever Muhammad in pieces. And the old man's like, it's cool. I've got that water of life from earlier. So they sprinkle it on him, put him back together and he's back to life. And he wants revenge. He dresses up all in black as a traveling bard and the mom doesn't recognize him and thinks he's hot and tries to seduce him because apparently she can get worse. He's like, let's get married. And he's like, what about your robber husband? And she's like, let's just kill him. It says, the man now saw his mother as she truly was and remembered the black crow eating the white cheese, which is kind of funny. Like he now knows that she's evil, not from like her murdering him and dismembering him. It's when he remembers that she cheated on his dad from a long time ago and she's going to cheat on the robber now. So he draws out his sword, he kills her. Also, we find out now that she and the robber have had a child during this time, and he murders the child, which sounds awful, but always happens in this sort of story, because sometimes it's not a robber, it's a ghoul or an ogre that she's been having this illicit affair with, and it's like a monster child from a horrible union, so it has to end. But yeah, it's upsetting. But then the chief of the robbers comes out and says, all right, kill me too. And the son says, no. You did nothing wrong, man. It's really all the woman's fault. What could you have done? And so the robber's like, actually, can I just be your servant for life? And he's like, yes, you can. And then he marries the crocodile girl and they live happily ever after. Because really, it's always all women's fault. Clearly, this is not always the case in all fairy tales and folklore, but it is often the case in patriarchal cultures because they're trying to perpetuate this idea of don't trust those women. Clearly, patriarchy is working, everyone. We gotta keep them under our thumb. Don't change things.